David Clendon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm pleased to take a short call on this bill. Somewhat against the trend of the debate this morning so far, I'll try and focus on the insurance industry, the sector, and some of the very major challenges that are coming before it, and in fact are already before that sector. We've supported this bill so far and will continue to do so. We believe that the insurance industry has been largely unregulated, and that is against the international norms and the expectations, and indeed against local expectations as well. There has been a degree of self-regulation in the New Zealand insurance industry, and to be fair, for the most part that has worked. The industry has been proactive in developing its own framework for management, for self-management. It has set out to achieve a fairly high standard of ethical behaviour, a degree of transparency, and requiring some proof of financial solvency within the sector. However, we cannot be at all complacent. Clearly, there is a history of reliability within the New Zealand insurance sector. The same could be said for the financial sector up until quite recently, as was referenced by the previous speaker. We know that goodwill and past performance are not necessarily, in fact, are far from being reliable indicators of future performance and the potential for future risk and indeed collapse. The insurance industry has never been one for the faint-hearted. There are some significant and some very new and demanding challenges ahead of it. So this bill is timely to the extent that it does endeavour to put some surety, or at least a degree of acknowledgement that the sector does need to be regulated. The bill is complex, it's wide-ranging, and there were elements within the original drafting that caused us some concern. In particular, those risk concerns were also reflected by other stakeholders, industry people and political interests as well. And one of the primary concerns we saw was that the bill as originally drafted around the matter of solvency standards created the potential for New Zealand-based operators, companies, to be disadvantaged, to have a significant disadvantage, particularly against providers from Australia, that could have imposed a competitive disadvantage on our companies and potentially could have driven our New Zealand insurers offshore. Fortunately, the Select Committee did some useful work about that, responded to some of the submitters, and the provisions of the new Section 53 do deal with that, to essentially removing that the likelihood of sending our industry overseas. It's clear that one of the more serious challenges facing the industry, and which makes the need for regulation to better protect consumers against the likelihood of industry failure, is the reality of climate change and the impact that will have on the assets that the industry protects and in which the industry invests its considerable amount of cash every year. Insurers internationally are recognising that global warming and climate change are a serious business issue as well as an environmental issue, that the two are intertwined, and to that end, international companies are endeavouring to lead by example in reducing their own environmental footprint and encouraging suppliers and customers to do likewise. And in New Zealand, IAG, by far and away the largest player in the New Zealand market, by gross written premium, something in excess of $1.2 billion, holding something like 2.5 million policies. It's also, that company, one of the most active in advocating for and acknowledging that environmental and social, as well as financial considerations, must be incorporated into assessments of risk. Climate change is already and will continue to have serious consequences for our natural and for our built environment, our national and our local infrastructure, our ability to conduct business and to maintain the integrity of our communities. We're already seeing, both locally and internationally, instances of much higher intensity and much more regular adverse weather events than we have seen historically. And the companies, the insurance companies, the industry who are carrying the risk for any damage to our natural and physical resources are of course highly exposed and will become more so as this climate change and the effects of it continues to develop over the coming few years and decades. If we do not respond quickly, if we do not respond intelligently, if we do not respond by changing our policies and our practices towards future-proofing our private and public assets against the effects of climate change, we can confidently expect to see the insurance sector, as all others, come in under increased pressure, increased likelihood of failures and collapses. A failure to future-proof our economy by attending to the effects of climate change will see the insurance industry either taking some huge financial hits or potentially withdrawing cover from the assets from the areas most exposed to the risks and challenges of climate change. I will quote from IAG's website, reminding us that that is the largest player in the New Zealand website, who have become very active in this area around sustainability, around acknowledging the threats to the industry. And I quote, the IAG says that the weather has become a vital concern to the insurance industry. We accept the strong scientific consensus that human-induced climate change is real. The consequences of climate change are being seen and heard with higher frequency and greater intensity. Those who live in riskier areas could well find insurance less affordable, less readily available, unless new solutions are found. The bill we are debating today is one useful and positive step towards that. It provides a mechanism for the continued evaluation of the financial and operational health of the insurance sector, and should to some extent provide an early warning system, if you like, that will let us know if any players in that sector are starting to get into any real difficulties. It's a necessary, albeit in itself this is not a sufficient element of what must be a much more comprehensive, a much more sustained response to protecting our individual and our collective future in what will be a much more dynamic, a much more unpredictable, a much more volatile physical and economic environment. Kia ora.